What I really challenge anyone in the operator space to think of is a day in the life for an operator is bananas these days. I really think and challenge folks. We really usually think of residents living where we work, but in reality, we work where they live. And that definition of home and how we curate that sense of home and listening to their feedback is essential to have success.
I think it's actually a great microcosm for everything that we do on site. Kadi talked about marketing's goal of trying to bring new customers into the door. To do that, we need 5-star reviews, right? We want to have our best foot forward online and really attract everybody through our digital curb appeal.
Okay, we're here with Kadi and Turner. Kadi, tell us about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at JVM Realty. I oversee our marketing strategies, brand development, corporate communications, and all of our corporate social responsibility. JVM's a real estate investment company and property management firm exclusively focused on the Midwest portfolio.
Nice. And before we go to Turner, if someone's watching the video, who is your cardboard cutout in the back there?
You beat me to it. I was going to ask that too.
Ryan, it is marketing Ryan Gosling, which I'm excited to tell you more about later.
Excellent. Okay, cool. All right, Turner, what about you? Who are you?
I'm Turner Batdorf. I'm the Senior Strategist at Turner Research. We are a vendor in the multifamily industry that specializes in resident satisfaction management. Specifically, we work with owners and operators to consult them on how to better take care of their residents. We primarily do surveys, online reviews, and we're very famous for our Aura score and our research.
Totally. When you walk around conferences, do you just see Aura scores above people's heads and you're just like judging as you surf the halls?
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite things to do is to quiz people on their Aura score, see how well they know it, if they've heard of it. We're usually pretty good about rewarding the people that are staying on top of it.
Oh, interesting. Read what's your Aura?
98.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd be very good. You'd be in the top 100, Reed.
Of course I would.
Yeah. Expect no different. Cool. Well, you guys recently did the circuit. We're talking about operations needs cleaner data. Is that right? Or you to make better operational decisions, you need better data? I don't know. Educate me here. What do we need data for operations?
Yeah, I think, the main thing that Kadi and I have noticed and has been kind of a big point of the different sessions that her and I have been working on is really that a lot of what is being focused on in operations isn't taking into account what marketing is understanding to be true about the customer in 2024. So I think there's an idea that coming out of COVID that everything has been different, that the resident has different needs than what they've previously had, and multifamily should therefore look a lot different. And while a lot of what's being done operationally is justified from the sense of there are exterior factors like supply costs rising or labor shortages or tighter margins that are warranting different actions on site, we both strongly believe that operators still need to take into account their customer. And the fact is that their product and the customer that they're reaching really values the idea of home, this personal feeling of being welcome, belonging, this feeling of warmth, comfort, safety, all the things that many of your listeners probably perceive to be true with home. And marketing has the data to substantiate and measure how we can best accommodate that. So our session has been primarily focused on, using operations and marketing to better work together so that the data that marketing is looking at every day is taken into account in anything that operations is doing on site or at a 30,000-foot glance with a management company.
And when Turner's talking about the whole concept of home, what I really challenge anyone in the operator space to think of is a day in the life for an operator is bananas these days. I'm very fortunate that I started my career on site, so I have a perspective of that. I really think and challenge folks. We really usually think of residents living where we work, but in reality, we work where they live. And that definition of home and how we curate that sense of home and listening to their feedback is essential to have success. Both for new leases as well as renewals. And in order to do that, you got to break down the silos between marketing and operations.
Cool. Well, does that mean, Katie, you figured that out? Like, how do we break down these silos?
Yeah, it's definitely something at JVM we pride ourselves on. We've achieved many prestigious awards as a result of it, but really, I like to think of it as two different lenses. You've got marketing curating this brand story, and operations is securing the leases and delivering on that story. Marketing has to get those prospects into the door while the operations teams are managing the day to day. Marketing knows what the residents want and honestly what they don't want and what they're not going to pay for or what they're willing to pay more for. And operations needs to act on that. We really need to have those two speaking together because if they're not, that's why I've got my marketing Ryan, right? We need marketing Ryan. We don't have operations Ryan anymore. He will be back in a later episode. But really, we need those two working together to curate that experience. How we incentivize our teams to really act on that service, how we get everyone talking together, how we get everyone to have a seat at the table, and using the data that Turner is talking about, it is absolutely critical. Marketing has access to all of this information. J. Turner Research has so much research on what the residents want as a whole in the industry, but then the marketing team at the operations lens at the property management side, they know exactly what your residents want as a portfolio or at a specific community. So they need to be talking together.
Yeah, well, it makes total sense to me. Reed and I have said this for years, where we think, the marketing should have more influence over operations, but we haven't seen. I haven't witnessed like in mass like the industry doing that well. That's why I was curious. So do you have any like tactical examples or something that's tangible there that you could share with us that may help help us all visualize what this could look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Turner, do you want to start with that one?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to speak my language here and talk about online reputation because I think it's actually a great microcosm for everything that we do on site. Katie talked about marketing's goal of trying to bring new customers into the door. To do that, we need 5-star reviews, right? We want to have our best foot forward online and really attract everybody through our digital curb appeal. Meanwhile, operations is focusing on keeping residents happy. If they're doing that well on a day-to-day basis, we're not going to see 1-star reviews pop up very often. So the example I like to use is talking about the shortest path to victory. If you want to have a good online reputation, you need to average online about a 4.4, 4.5 average minimum across all the different reviews you have coming in. Now, if you're just an average property and you're really focused on your online reputation, you're probably getting about 5 to 10 reviews in a month. And so let's just pretend that 6 of those reviews are a 5-star and 2 of those are a 1-star. It may surprise you to know that actually boils down to just a 4.0 average. So that's obviously really good. That's well above the national average, but not quite to that elite tier that I spoke of. So it'd be very easy for marketing just to say, all right, let's go out and try to get additional 5-star reviews. Let's host resident events, maybe employ different tactics around the communities to try to engage their residents further. And let's say they are able to get an additional 5-star. Well, the star rating average only goes up to about 4.13. So it's just a minor improvement that's definitely closer to where we want to be. And actually, I should think the number is 4.11, excuse me. But it's still not to that 4.4 level, 4.5 level that we would ultimately like to get to. But if that same property that's getting 6 5-stars a month is just able to reduce it from 2 1-stars a month to 1 1-star a month, that star rating average does jump all the way up to 4.43. So much closer to where they want to be. And so marketing would actually be best served. If they're really focusing on trying to have the best online reputation, they should definitely still be focused on trying to help their teams engage their residents and get 5-star feedback. But they're going to be stuck in neutral unless they're also engaging their operations team to figure out where they can reduce 1-star feedback, which really boils down to delivering on resident satisfaction and addressing any pain points that may exist with their residents.
Cool. Well, Katie, is that your example as well, or do you have a separate one? I want to give you space if so. If not, I can dive into the reputation.
Yeah. I would definitely say this comes into play and was a real-time example. We recently completed a reputation blitz. It's really important to engage and excite and motivate. I always really believe in the flywheel effect. Experience creates belief, belief creates action. Part of those experiences are contests. Folks in the field are very, very competitive, and they're driven by prizes, and they're driven by, how do they outshine their peers. So in our reputation blitz, we did about a 2-month time period. We actually saw a boost of 126% in our reviews. Now, that's great and dandy, like Turner shared, but what was even more successful for driving the success for our residents is 91% of it was 4-star and above. So we were utilizing J. Turner research to know, okay, what are the pain points of our residents? How do we resolve the 1-stars that are already out there? And then how do we know to curate and drive those 5-stars? So it's a quicker path to victory. So as a result, we saw a 7.5% increase in our star rating from that contest alone.
So does this mean if I'm trying to piece this together, Turner, you mentioned how in some instances maybe it does make sense for marketing to be the one that's focusing on the reviews, but it also sounded like maybe in other instances this really should roll into operations to minimize the number of 1-star reviews. So in this case, Kadi, in my experience, the marketing team usually owns rep management kind of at large, but it also has been, in my experience, less of their overall job responsibility or focus. And so it's kind of been more of an afterthought. And they'll often say, well, the property manager should be doing X, Y, and Z, kind of the stuff that you just talked about. So how do you facilitate that then? Or, what might be a way that someone could facilitate better collaboration there?
What we love to do, a peek into our secret sauce, is we like to serve up recommendations to our teams on a monthly basis. What is the review site that you can benefit from working on? What are the things going really well? Having conversations. We analyze the data, but rather than just giving data to the teams and having it as information overload, we engage in a conversation at a regional and property level. What's going really well? You guys had 15 5-star reviews last month, and it looks like Gil is mentioned by name in the majority of them. Gil, what's your secret sauce? What's going on? So we really have them part of the conversation. When they feel involved in it, they're more excited and motivated to drive that initiatives. However, marketing needs to serve it up to them to help them start that conversation, because if we just point them at a bunch of data, they may get lost because they don't know how to read it or they don't have access to the information. So it's a reoccurring serving up and prompting of information, whether it's areas of opportunity or areas of strength. I like to always start with strength, build them up, and then, okay, now they're feeling good, they're feeling confident. Now how can we tackle this problem? Okay, lighting seems to be an issue at your property. That's skewing a perception of safety. Looks like we need to continually walk our properties to make sure that outside at night, even when you aren't there, that all the lights are working, everything's sparkle clean. So those types of things, serving up those digestible bites. We usually like to give 3 tips to the property per month to help point them in the right direction.
Well, I like some of those nuggets in there, the 3 tips, the analyzing, telling them what to do, like that all resonates. Reed, I know you're dazed by Gosling in the corner. Do you want to ask him a couple questions or?
I'm more of a, you just said Gosling, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Isn't it? It's like Gosling.
Is that Gosling? I thought you said that was the other Ryan Reynolds.
Well, we're Gosling truthers.
Oh,
over
no,
here.
it's Gosling.
Oh, it is Gosling. Okay.
Okay.
All right, you got it right.
Hey,
I just got criticized because I called Ryan Gosling Ryan Reynolds. There's a new movie called Fall Guy that he's in, and my girls, only because they are big fans of the Barbie movie, actually know who Ryan Gosling is. So they were very quick to correct me and scold me, shame me.
Did they know who Ryan Reynolds is?
A little bit, because he also has a movie that's more suited for them. I think it's. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like Imaginary Friend or something?
Yeah,
yes,
I saw the trailer.
I haven't seen it yet, but it's on the media track right now.
Yeah. So I think it's fair for Dad to be a little confused here.
Yeah,
but no, I am not going to have a conversation with Gosling. Cut out Gosling. But I do want to know, bringing it back a bit to that bridge and kind of one brain, maybe like trying to get marketing and operations in total sync. If you can expand a little bit more, David was asking for some tactical things, and how to achieve that. And what are some good examples of where through your aura, through the feedback, you mentioned the lighting, that you've been able to pick up some, I'll call it transformative air quotes here, like insights that you've been able to leverage perhaps even across the portfolio. And my qualifier for that, or second question, is David and I often have referred to properties as snowflakes, meaning they're so unique, even though people like to think of, oh, it's the same kind of asset, same kind of locale. Like, it's like, no, actually what works at one property or what creates a great experience doesn't necessarily just lift to across the street. And so that to me presents some challenges when it comes to the insights and knowledge that marketing might bring. It's not always something you can just spread out across like an entire portfolio. So I'm wondering how you guys approach like some of the nuggets, nuances, learnings that you might get on the marketing side as it relates to like improving one property's experience and operational kind of I don't know, value versus like the broader rollouts. So do you guys get very like kind of look for almost like secrets or learnings like at certain properties and then do a little bit bigger test and then a broader test? But how does that equation work between picking up the insights from marketing and then leveraging them either independently or at a broader level?
For us, the game changer, and I'll let Turner kind of explain this technology a little bit deeper, but what's been a game changer for us is utilizing AI across our reputation management platform. For them, it's called a tool named Einstein, and I'll let Turner share more about it, but that's allowed us to think both wide and deep when looking at our portfolio as a whole, looking at a regional portfolio, or looking at an individual property as a unique snowflake, like you're saying, because at JVM, I have 23 properties, but I do look at all 23 property details every single month. I can do that because of this AI. So I'll let him kind of share a little bit more about that and how it breaks it down.
Yeah, I mean, Reed, what you outlined in your question is incredibly daunting, right? You're trying to take all these senses of how residents feel at all these different communities and be able to come to conclusions about what you do operationally well and where you have room for improvement. That's a lot. And the reality is that especially operations folks who are concentrated on meeting their budgets or putting out fires on a day-to-day basis, they don't have time to really get into how residents are feeling at that granular of a level. But marketing has already been looking at this data because they have access to things like surveys and reviews. The biggest issue that we've seen is them getting score locked, where they're just taking something like a star rating and just saying, all right, I'm averaging 3.8 on my reviews. I know that's good, not great. I need to improve that. And they haven't been able to specifically get into the areas of what they need to be doing differently operationally. Now, I work with a lot of clients here at J. Turner, and so I kind of have this takeaway that inside the reviews themselves, it's a gold mine because reviews are unprompted. We a lot of times forget that reviews are totally unprompted. The person leaves a 1 to 5 star rating and then has a text box to type whatever is on their mind. There is nothing that says they need to talk about how good the maintenance team is or how nice Lisa in the leasing office was. They're just free to talk about why they left the star rating that they did. Now, they're doing it as almost like a referral or a comment on their resident experience for others to see. So we should interpret that whatever they write within their review or survey comment is a reflection of what is driving the satisfaction level they have. If it was a 5-star, they're talking about the things that were difference makers for them, those wow moments they had, the connections they were able to make on site. If it was a 1-star review, it's the things that ticked them off, the things that they were completely dissatisfied with that made them go online and leave that review for others to see. So I started to manually go in and annotate the reviews that our clients were getting. I could do about 100 comments an hour. And, a lot of the bigger companies out there, they get 1,000 to 2,000 comments a month. So, whether it's me, whether it's, a contact like Kadi doing it, I mean, that they don't have the time to spend 10 to 20 hours each month going in there and annotating reviews to try to come to some sense of, what's being mentioned in a positive or negative way most frequently. That's where Einstein came in. So I spent the last 3 years or so helping spearhead the development of that tool for J Turner. And so what it does is it takes each thought within each review, it puts it into one of 22 operational categories that have been trained specifically for multifamily, and then assigns each thought as positive or negative. So if we take a review where they say, Lisa in the leasing office is great. She's so helpful. I love her, but I wish the trash management was better. It would take the first comment, make it a customer service mention, put positive because it's a compliment, take the trash complaint at the end, mark it as trash with a negative sign behind it. So it does that for each one, which obviously allows you to go through the reviews and begin to see some commonalities. But where I think we're able to fully connect the dots and really get marketing connected with operations is once you've started to look at percentage frequencies with large sample size, you have something that's objectively not only measuring your performance over time, but allowing you to compare yourself to other properties, your competitors, what is normal for a property to receive. Every resident, 2 out of 3 residents are going to talk about customer service within their reviews. It's just a really important part of the resident experience. But being able to take a category like pet waste and understand what an overly frequent number of complaints are for that category, those are the things that allow you to take a step back and say, all right, this is a performance issue. Let's go ahead and try to make an improvement at this property for this. And then we can see if the complaints objectively go down through the same tool, and we have an idea of whether what we employed on the site ended up working.
I think that piece right there is one of the harder things. We often, when we talk to, I'll say, other suppliers and entrepreneurs, they're bringing new tech, and I'm going to be specific with tech as this example, to multifamily, how they do prove that something's working because of all the variables. So when you see that, I don't know, NOI or leasing's up, whatever those KPIs are as an operator, it's almost as hard to discern like what really motivated this improvement. Was it just the market? Was it something that we did, as far as the amenities, the upgrades, whatever? So I don't know, either one of you have any comments or thoughts and how to better normalize the picture so that you can validate, I guess, some of these ideas of like, hey, we were able to discern that, we needed more lighting in the parking lot, and we actually the following year we're able to get that built into the budget, and now we're seeing it seems like better retention. I mean, I'm simplifying maybe too much this example, but I think you guys track me, right? Is how do you better validate or understand whether some of these learnings that are then turned into new operational elements are, you can validate that, feel confident. How do you normalize the picture?
I would almost want to take it one step back even further before making tech investments. That's where I like to evaluate what our residents are asking for and saying for. A great example, when looking at, for example, internet, we may get, there's a lot of disconnect sometimes between what C-suite, on-site teams and marketing teams may think that the residents want and what's going to drive their satisfaction. Maybe we think, okay, we need to adjust our internet. We need to fix this problem. Well, what if no one's saying it's a problem? Or what if everyone actually loves the way it currently is? So I usually recommend baseline understanding. What is the sentiment today? What is the problem you're looking to solve? And if you decide it's a strategic business decision, regardless of what the residents are saying, that's totally fine. But then you know that baseline understanding, because if you're going to change something they already really like, how do you measure the success? Because it may actually cause dissatisfaction if even the goal for you was to improve internet, they were happy before. So I think really starting at the baseline of understanding what your residents want is a good place to start. Customer service is a huge thing you need to focus on, regardless of what tech is coming into the conversation. We need to make sure that we are anticipating the needs of our residents. Jay Bear in our industry, he's spoken in our industry a few times. He's not from our industry, but he always says 85% of customers say that responsiveness is just as important for the loyalty of their business. If we implement new tech, but we can't respond to emails or phone calls, what good is that tech providing? So that's another baseline I really want to make sure we get very excited about all the new technology advancements that are transforming our industry every single day. But we must meet the customers where they're at before we can even measure some of those tools. I know that kind of takes two steps back further than forwardly answering. But Turner, do you have any stats on particular advancements in any of the Einstein categories?
Yeah, I mean it's a really boring answer, unfortunately, but like we don't see things like EV charging or smart home technology like a Nest thermostat be a big differentiator in getting people to either stay at their apartment or move to an apartment. I mean, they're very nice to have things. They're amenities that I definitely understand investing in, but having a way to come back to, is this driving our bottom line performance? Is this attracting people in the door? Is it keeping people from leaving? You have to be able to boil it down to those things. So if you come back to something like a review or a survey comment where, you know, the person is tasked with talking about their living experience, and if they're not talking about those things, you should not see them as drivers of resident retention or attraction of new prospects. And that's just the reality. And so, you know, what we consistently see as the things that make or break the difference are just the pillars of multifamily, you know, getting back to the basics. Kadi mentioned customer service. Like the stat I just said, 2 out of 3 reviews mention the person's relationship with the staff, how helpful they are, what their attitude is. 24% of reviews mention maintenance service, just how good the maintenance team is at fulfilling work orders. You go down the list, it's amenities, condition of the unit, communication, just kind of those most basic principles of multifamily. You know, that's really what is going to be the biggest driver. So any way that you can go back and figure out how those things are measuring into your KPIs is really going to be what I would give advice to. You know, I mentioned AI has been a great way to help simplify the process because it makes it objective. It makes it to where marketing can speak operations language because they can show a numerical metric that tracks it. But you don't want to just get so caught up in some of the fine details of it that you miss out on some of the bigger points, which is that we're still having to deliver on a home.
Well, there's 2 other places that I can think of that would deliver, I suppose, as much value or maybe even more than reviews themselves. And feel free to challenge me on this, Turner. But I'm wondering if you use any of or have partnered with some of the AI leasing agents. So, you know, I won't list there's now a pretty good list and growing, it seems like, that have entered this space. But that as we see more of the generative AI and advancements, and I'm going to give kudos or shout out to Leah Pro as, you know, coming from, as David says, the circuit, you know, we're hearing more and more about they're kind of breaking through this glass ceiling, I guess, as far as advancements in conversation, like, and therefore, if you can, those transcripts, wouldn't they be extremely telling in what customers are really looking for, or renters are looking for? And then same thing with like the social channels. So if you're looking at the community pages and seeing what the community is talking about, reacting to, in addition to the reviews, you just seem to be building a richer and richer pool of like very honest feedback. As you said, this is not provoked. It's like somebody logs a comment on a community Facebook page and then responds to it. It's like nobody forced you to do that. And then, of course, on the front end of the resident journey, when people are interacting with now these leasing agents, AI leasing agents, isn't there some really valuable data there too? So, yeah, any thoughts, comments on kind of those other 2 data sets outside of just reviews?
Yeah, I think those are great things that you mentioned. You know, we've done research in like the most frequently asked things on Google Q&A. We've done studies into prospects' behavior within the property websites themselves. And I think all that data is incredibly valuable because, again, you're just stripping back, kind of asking a question. You know, if you ask someone, would you want EV charging stations at your property? Some people would say yes. Let's say maybe even a good majority of people might say yes. But if you ask them, would they pay more for it? You might get a different answer, right? So I think anything you're doing that's kind of just getting them within their process of, you know, whether they would decide to move into a community, whether they would refer the community to their friends, you know, those are very, you know, things that have a direct correlation onto our bottom line. So any data you can get on that is incredibly valuable.
How much do you think that the value of that data then is more before the property is built? Like the EV charging station, you usually do that like as you open a property versus like come back later. So versus how either actionable or valuable is the data after the fact? Like now, Kadi, you have a property that's been open 3 years, it's stabilized, so on and so forth. So like, does a different data set become more important to you?
Yes and no. I would say evaluating in the very specific example we're sharing, a thing like adding EV is actually a really critical component for stabilized assets. We need to remain competitive with the new products coming into the market. So we need to utilize data to evaluate where we're going to make our capital investments, right? Is this worth it to invest? Is it either A, going to drive our NOI, or B, is it going to make us retain, right? Can we continue to elevate our product while maintaining and surpassing customer service, so that way they still choose to call our apartment building a home compared to the neighbor down the street that is brand new. They may have the latest, but we still can continually be investing in our properties. And I would say we're using AI constantly, even beyond reputation management for surveys and reviews, because what we want to do is we want to create models that describe outcomes or use models to analyze data to predict outcomes. We do this all the time in the digital advertising space. So we like to use that type of same approach in every area of business as we break down marketing and operations silos. What data can we collect? How can we leverage the technology we have today to focus amidst the noise? The strategy is not new. It's just how we're leveraging the technology today to make those decisions quicker in the best interest of our residents.
Okay, cool. I had one other thing I was surprised Reed didn't bring up, but maybe Reed, you had already had this conversation with him at lunch or something. But somebody was talking on this, in the last few minutes, they were talking about not over indexing based on feedback. For example, that this is how I'm interpreting it. So like if Turner, where people are only getting 5 or 10 reviews a month, that's not a huge sample size, but then someone may be super noisy or a squeaky wheel, right, about whatever they're in those reviews. So I don't know if we start like with you, Turner, and how you think about that so that you don't overreact to effectively one person out of like 400 that live at a property. And then Kadi, how you think about operationalizing that. Cause I know the owners are often, that they view the review and they're like, this is so important, but in reality, maybe it's not for their actual goals. So anyways, let's take it in that order.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. I mean, in general, the guiding principle of acting on data is you need a good sample size, right? You don't want to make any major decisions based on a small sample. So that's why we kind of advocate looking at, all right, if the national average is this percentage of complaints about a particular category, let's say it's trash management, and you're at triple that, like over a 6-month sample, we probably know that it's a problem. And so that would maybe a time you want to evaluate what you're doing for trash management. But if you're in line with the national average, yes, you're getting a couple of complaints, but it's pretty normal, right? So that's a way we can contextualize it. And I think that's a very fair way to go about evaluating on a big scale what you're doing on site or operationally across a portfolio. However, I will say this. Every single one of those reviews is a resident that has taken the time to offer you feedback, and they've given specific reasons they were satisfied or dissatisfied. So while we may not want to make a huge major decision based on 1 or 2 people's feedback, any of those residents that we can work with and try to address their concerns does add dollars to the bottom line if we can turn that interaction around. I think it's a major mistake just to dismiss them as being emotional reactions by the residents, or only looking at it that there's 2 sides to every story. Again, that person took the time to type out that feedback. They specifically mentioned something they were dissatisfied with. So I know Kadi can speak more on this, but I really do believe that trying to address whatever they're mentioning and working to resolve it is going to help you save on turnover costs, which, especially with where supply costs are going, does ultimately really matter in terms of your bottom line. I think it's going to matter even more as we head into the market over the next 5 years, where retaining residents is going to be a huge premium.
I completely agree. We live in a world right now where time is our greatest currency. So we absolutely need to appreciate the feedback, even though we need to contextualize the volume of that feedback and look at the data set. It is very important to understand, okay, what caused this situation? What can we learn from this situation? Can we have a conversation with the resident, former resident, prospect, whoever it may be? But then also working with our teams to know we need to control our controllables. There are certain things that are inevitable, whether it's in property management or life overall. The biggest thing that I find is our teams take their job so seriously and they take so much pride in curating a home for our residents. So it's actually sometimes the biggest detriment when they take it personal, and it's really hard to help them keep moving forward because sometimes there is that squeaky wheel that things happen and we are human. What I find 9 times out of 10 is communication is going to resolve it. You may not be able to entirely fix the situation, but if you're regularly and continually communicating, that resident, if you do remedy their situation, they're going to be the first to go to the mountaintops and scream your praises. They're going to be the first to refer your community to another future resident. So I find really sometimes when things go wrong, that's our greatest opportunity to pivot and course correct, but always making sure that we're telling our teams to control our controllables.
Totally. I recently heard an interview with someone that had an experience at the Ritz, and they said that at the Ritz, like they had gone to dinner there, and I think they said that dinner took like 3 or 3.5 hours to complete, and they were upset about this. They're like, "Man, this is way too long." They weren't at dinner to have this like long experience. They're like, "I want to treat my team. I want to celebrate," and they said appetizers took like an hour and a half to come out. Anyways, they told the hotel manager afterwards, and that hotel manager was like, "Hey, this is unacceptable. I'm really ticked off that you had that experience. We have some staff, some new staff, and this is certainly the cause, but that's not your problem. That's my problem, and we shouldn't have allowed this to happen." And he said for the rest of his time in that city, that hotel manager scheduled him meals at other restaurants and picked up the cost of those meals and actually met him at the restaurants and said, to make sure they got seated quickly and that they were taken care of. And he's like, that hotel manager, it wasn't his restaurant at the Ritz. It was just at the Ritz. And none of these other restaurants did he earn anything from. But now he's like, I'll tell everybody about the Ritz and the experience because it went poorly, but they give me a wow moment afterwards. And he's like, now that's my guy. I'm going to that, that hotel manager at the Ritz, every time. So I'm with you, Katie. I'm just trying to help make your point.
They gained a customer for life. Reputation is built on the stories we share, and you're even continuing that story that wasn't even your own. So it is so foundational when you think of 360 customer service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's kind of like our overarching point. I know we've talked a lot about reviews, but like I said at the beginning, it's a microcosm for everything that, is going on operationally, because it's just a keyhole into seeing what exactly is happening at the property, right? So anything that we're doing to, zoom in and figure out where we can make those wow moments or where we can address any dissatisfaction is so critical. Like I said, especially as we enter this market. We worked with a company here that, rolled out centralized maintenance. And, we were able through review data, the stuff that marketing was looking at, to be able to objectively show the negative effect of rolling out that program was for their properties, that they were just getting inundated with lower satisfaction across the board. It was causing residents to leave, prohibiting prospects from seeing their communities online in a favorable sense. I mean, like I said, it's just a microcosm, but it is an insight into something that really boils down to resident retention, and marketing has regular access to this information. So if they're doing a good job of being able to objectively measure those feelings and get it in the hands of operations, it just may allow that operations to make some smart decisions about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis or at a 30,000 foot level.
Cool. Well, Reed, anything to wrap up with here?
Just, but I'm going to ask, between kind of predictive and I don't know if reactive is fair. I don't want it to come off as, I guess, critical or the wrong way here, and for both of you to answer. But when you're looking at reviews, or and the industry needs to do a lot of this, but it's like you're you're looking at like a snapshot in time of, okay, the last 12 months, this is what, we're hearing from reviews or customer, just, renter sentiment. And so I'm going to try to connect this to the EV thing, EV stations. It's like, so right now we're not seeing this as in reviews, or it doesn't seem like this is actually that big of a thing. Is it safe for all of us to assume that this is probably going to become a bigger thing over the next 10 years, And so I'm wondering how you guys look at or try to lean into predictive, I guess, analysis research. And Turner, I don't know how much Turner offers that when they're doing, these incredibly, in-depth and wide studies where it's like, hey, you may not be seeing this yet in your reviews and chatbots, but it is coming. And if you're thinking about breaking ground or you're a developer, these are some things that you'd want to get ahead of. As David's saying, isn't when you be thinking EV when you're building a new property now. But there's a lot of other examples of that. And David's heard a million times from me. I always talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's like with digital advertising, Kadi, you can appreciate this, but you'll look at it. It's like, well, yeah, more leads came from ILS and from search because that's where we're spending more money. So we shouldn't be stunned by that. Will that give us, ideas of how to, maybe test and experiment in other platforms? Probably not if you're not doing any of that testing. So I won't blather on. Would love to hear how you guys think about predictive versus like kind of the research based on those snapshots of maybe the last, 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, we at J Turner, our philosophy is just to ask. We do a study almost every year, or at least every couple of years, called the Internet Adventure, where we go and we ask prospects, what they're looking for as far as amenities, and what they would be willing to pay extra for. I think that that's a great standard bearer. If EV charging stations are great. I mean, like I said, I think if you asked anybody, would you want this at your property? Most people will say yes. The people with EV charging or EV cars will probably say definitely yes, right? But I think like where the buck stops in terms of being able to evaluate, is this something we have to have, comes from just some way of measuring, can you get the cost accounted for? Is it worth the investment into the property because we can charge X more dollars in rent, or we will retain X percentage more residents because we have these, and if we didn't, we would be losing people. I think like we get very caught up as an industry with the new fanciest technologies, but sometimes we forget just to bring it back to doing the basics well, because you can have EV charging stations, but if you're not delivering on strong communication, or you're not delivering on strong maintenance, people are still going to leave. So the question that operators have to ask is, can we invest the dollars into EV charging stations without sacrificing the things that are ultimately retaining residents? Or can we prove that EV charging does matter in terms of being able to retain residents? Either approach works. If you're able to do that in either fashion, I think that you're still set up for success, and you can safely predict that investing in the technology like that would be worth it.
I completely agree with Turner. I like to say we tread lightly with the new hotness in when we're looking at the broader scheme of technology or investments. However, I would approach your question how we approach our transaction investments. While we're not doing new developments at JVM, what we're looking at is also in the industry and out of the industry data sets. So beyond resident surveys and feedback, what I like to start is actually within our CRM and within our resident database. Who has an electric vehicle? Like, let's at least start there. How many electric vehicles do we have at our communities? But then again, to answer and think of that future proofing, okay, what major jobs are coming to this market? What major things are coming to the greater community? To take a bigger lens at what we forecast to come to the area, because that goes into consideration. And not only are we adding EV to our communities, but two, what is coming to our greater community that's a value for someone to live here as a bigger picture. We try to build value beyond individual capital projects, but really what's going to get them and keep them, keep the heads in the beds, right? So we look at bigger market research to understand before we make these types of investments, whether it's EV or purchasing an asset.
Cool. Well, as tempted as I am, we're trying to wrap up to talk centralization, or this is one of my favorite topics with Kadi at lunch, because they're actually, I don't want to say anti-centralization, but have a different viewpoint on it, which I really loved. So maybe round 2 with you guys.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, back to where we started in David's kind of first question, if we can end here, if there's any other, and the reason the whole centralization thing even popped into my head is because we often, when we've talked to people about this, operators that feel like they've had success with it, will say, hey, what would be the first couple of steps that you think are necessary, whether you had to do it all over again or whether you feel like you got it right, that you would encourage somebody else to take if they, are thinking about, that kind of strategy or shift. So that's my setup to how to close the gap between marketers and operators, and create more solidarity, cohesiveness between those divisions. It seems to me that it helps when you have somebody like you that's the czar of everything, JVM, because that certainly, has to close the gap on some level. But if you weren't in that position and you really were running it kind of independently, those two divisions, can you offer any other suggestions for our listeners, just some basic like steps or tactics, giving you an example of like, start speaking the same language, make sure that there's overlapping KPIs, that those aren't totally disparate, because then, you could have these divisions in conflict. So just trying to tee this up a little bit, but are there any other best practices or tips that you could offer up as far as how to better connect those two divisions of the company?
For the marketers listening, I really encourage you to ask questions and listen. Understand what the actual problems are beyond just looking at resident feedback and sentiment, but talk to your operations team. Start with a conversation and understand, what are your pain points? What is going well? What do you define as success? You brought up one of my favorite points, KPIs. Not only what are your KPIs, but what are the definitions of those KPIs and data sets? A huge one I like to talk about that is different for every single department is a conversion. A conversion is different for all of us, and we need to baseline understand so we can speak the same language. So a lot of listening, a lot of asking questions. But then I challenge marketers, we have a plethora of data and KPIs at our fingertips. We need to translate that into sales performance. What is going to help drive the bottom line? We can get so micro and macro, but at the end of the day, we need to learn as marketers to speak the language of those in the operations and the sales side. I'm very fortunate. I oversee both sales and marketing, but most companies, those are different departments. If you can't learn to speak the sales language, marketing seems like this big black box of spend and they don't understand it. So I really encourage teams to lean in and listen, so you may have different KPIs than them, but understand what their KPIs are so you can speak the same language.
That's great. I don't think you can add anything, Turner. I would almost caution you not to, because I think she hit that one out of the park. So
she did. They do a great job at JVM. So I would encourage everyone to do exactly as she says.
Cool. Well, Turner, if people want to know more about what you guys do, where should we direct them?
Yeah, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm just trying to get as many connections as Kadi. That's a goal of mine. So please add me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you guys and pass along any research that we have, or talk to you more about Einstein. You can find us also at jturnerresearch.com if you have any inquiries on a product basis.
What's on the line here, Turner, as far as who has more connections? Is that cut out cardboard maybe going to move over to your back?
Reed, I'm fighting a losing battle. I don't want any. I'm like plus 1,200 odds to ever catch Kadi in terms of LinkedIn connections. So once I get a little bit closer, maybe we can come up with some kind of some bet that we can cash in on.
Well, what about you, Kadi? Are you taking new applications? Or are you gonna just tell our folks to pound sand and don't reach out?
No, please reach out. Like I love to meet new people, and I love to talk about our industry. I started in the industry a while ago, and it actually is a funny story of starting when I was in second grade. So that's why I have a lot of deep-rooted connections. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I love to chat and learn more. JVMRealty.com is our website. We're always hiring for our properties across the Midwest, as well as in our corporate office in Oak Brook, Illinois. So would love to learn more about anybody or have a conversation.
Get down.